The dark web is something we should never mess with. The things you will find are frightening, as you will hear in tonight's episode. Lock your windows, lock your doors, and enter the alternate nightmare. The events of this story happened several years ago. During the course of that year, I lived overseas. My company had a branch in Europe, and I decided I would work there for a year or so. For the most part, it was beautiful, and I had a really great time learning the culture and meeting new people. But during the holiday time, especially around Christmas, it could get very lonely and make me homesick. My family and friends still lived back in the United States and could not afford to come see me. And because of my job, I was stuck in Europe for the time being. On Christmas, I stayed home in my apartment and decided to watch movies. After watching Netflix for a couple hours, I got bored and was looking for something to entertain me for a while. Quick backstory about me: when I was in high school, my friends and I used to crack the surface of the so-called dark web, or deep web. We were all pretty computer savvy and thought we were cool being able to access it at a young age. We didn't do anything besides just surf around, as we were scared to stumble across something we should not. Well, fast forward back to the present, and I have not done anything like that in close to 10 years. But I decided searching the dark web was just the excitement I was looking for on this quiet Christmas evening. It honestly seemed pretty harmless, and I thought, what could go wrong? I searched through dozens of dead-end links and pages, and nothing really seemed to spark my interest. After about an hour or so of surfing, I decided it was finally time for bed. I closed everything down on my computer and went to the bathroom. When I came out, I noticed my webcam screen was up. Being a little naive, I did not think anything of it and just closed it out. As I turned away, it popped up again. As I stood and watched it for several seconds, trying to comprehend what was happening, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text message from a private number that said, "I see you." Beyond creeped out and starting to get worried, I decided to shut off my lights and turn the computer off. But before I could, I had an email pop up on my desktop. The email was a picture of my apartment building. I unplugged my computer and grabbed a knife from my kitchen and stood in the corner of my apartment. Almost immediately after unplugging the computer, another text came through that said, "I hope your doors are locked." I couldn't comprehend what was happening. I was frozen in both shock and fear. All I could think of was something happened while I was on the dark web, but I was not sure what. For hours, I stood in my dark apartment, staring at the windows and doors. Every little noise made me jump out of my skin. Every time I heard somebody in the hall, I was getting myself ready for self-defense. Now, this was Christmas night, and the middle of the night at this point. There was no way there should be that much foot traffic in my hallway, but I heard it. Back and forth, I heard footsteps all night long, but never anybody actually standing in front of or knocking at my door. Finally, morning came, and I still had not slept or hardly moved all night. At about 8:30, somebody knocked on my door. I slowly approached the door, not knowing at all what to expect. As I looked through the peephole, I noticed it was my neighbor. I opened the door and greeted him. "I hope you had a nice Christmas," he said to me in an almost excited voice. I just nodded and said, "You too," in his cheerful morning voice. He then said, "Somebody dropped this letter off to me this morning and said it was for you. But they said they could not talk to you for some reason." I took the letter, knowing deep down where it truly came from. I asked what did he look like, and he responded with, well, he was actually a she, and she was pretty. You know, dark hair, pretty smile. I said thanks and shut the door. Standing right there, I opened the letter. It was a Christmas card with Santa on the front, and the inside of the card was written as follows. It started with my name, my full name, and then read as follows: "I hope you had a nice Christmas. I am sad you never came out in the hall to meet me and my friends. I guess there is always next year. Happy Christmas." I left right at that moment. I grabbed the few things I needed and checked into a hotel. I stayed a couple of nights and returned back to the States. I told my bosses I was having some sort of medical emergency and that I felt more comfortable finishing out my contract in the States. I never contacted the police and have also never been so scared in my entire life. Every single time I get on the internet, I get a little shaky and only use it for my job and not personal use. Nothing like this has happened to me again in the years since, and thankfully, no follow-ups to this single occurrence. I still can't help but wonder what I strolled upon that night and why I was targeted. If I can leave you with a bit of advice, don't be a novice strolling around the dark web, especially on Christmas. Every once in a blue moon, I like to log onto the deep web and search for weird and strange things. In general, it's a relatively tame place. All the stories you hear about red rooms and hitmen are bull 99% of the time, and these sites you see covered on YouTube are just FBI and other various law enforcement agencies' honey traps, set up to capture criminals and stupid kids looking to score drugs online. The majority of the traffic taking place on the deep web these days is insiders leaking information to journalists, and pervs sharing lewd photos of kids. Yes, there are many other uses for it, but the virtual anonymity of the platform allows these behaviors to thrive. I would like to make it clear I wholly support whistleblowers having a safe place to pass on information. The story I'm about to share occurred in my early days surfing the deep web. I had heard all the stories and was eager to see how real they were. Like others, I was a little disappointed in what I found. The raciest place I'd come across was a picture and video forum that was heavy on the adult stuff. I guess the best description of it is a deep web porn hub, crossed with live leak. Everything was allowed, as long as it was legal. So, the kid sex stuff was banned, thankfully. The adult videos were the main reason I was there. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of the other members traded their homemade videos and pictures between one another, and I enjoyed checking those posts out. Most of the modern mainstream adult movies are a little degrading to the actresses, but I discovered the amateur stuff was not. Pretty vanilla, actually. This made them much easier for me to enjoy. It may have been my third or fourth time I'd visited the site when I got a private message from another member. I wasn't sure why he chose me, or even how he knew I was there at that time, but I read it anyway. He said he was a moderator and noticed I'd visited multiple times, but had not shared anything. Apparently, the sharing thing, while not required, was highly encouraged. He wanted to know if I had anything to share. Basically, I've never been the kind of to film myself doing it. However, I didn't want to cause any trouble. After thinking about it for a minute, I remembered I had a few nudes of my ex-girlfriend's older sister. She had sent me, so I sent those. 30 minutes later, he sent a second message. He sounded pleased with the pictures and had a few files I could download. Despite being grateful, I was a tad bit leery of downloading something from a stranger, but my curiosity got the best of me. The first few videos were pretty average, yet enjoyable. However, the next was a bit unsettling. It was a guy slapping his female partner over and over, and then choking her with a length of rope. I skipped that one quickly and moved on, but the next was even worse. The video started with a close-up of a woman's leg, wearing a spiked high heel. Then it pulled away to show a kitten laying on the floor. This confused me for a second, but then the woman raised her leg and stomped down on the kitten. I spent the next several minutes weeping uncontrollably. Being a massive animal lover, this kind of garbage horrifies me. Call me a pussy all you want, but there's nothing sexy about that crap. The tears eventually gave over to sheer anger, and I sent a venom-laden message to the asshole voicing my distaste for his joke. I let my anger get the best of me, and I foolishly threatened to send them to the cops. Looking back on this now, it was an empty threat. The cops wouldn't likely be able to find the guy, or really care. After witnessing what I had, I stayed off the deep web for about a month. When I did return, I noticed a new message from the asshole that sent me the horrible videos. I was reluctant to read it at first, kind of wanted to move on and put it behind me, but another part of me wanted to see his justification for thinking I would like that garbage. Ultimately, I made the right choice, or maybe not. It depends on perspective, I guess. What I would read, I was not expecting. For some reason, he got it into his head that I did not belong on the forum, and he wanted to drive me away. My mistake was threatening him. He must have foreseen this, and he suggested I search my hard drive. It claimed he had hidden a file within the download that had enough child pornography to put me in prison for a long time. This left me with no defense. A search of my hard drive uncovered an unknown file that I did not recognize, and it was, indeed, a massive file. Although it may have been nothing, there was no way I was going to take the chance of infecting my computer with this filth. Hours of work left me with no hope of removing it. Perhaps a more computer-literate person could do it, but I was not one of those. I battled around with it in my mind for a long time, until I saw no other option. A sledgehammer made quick work of the laptop. In less than 10 minutes, my problem was solved, and I'd learned my lesson. From that day on, I'll never download anything unless I know for certain it is safe. Since then, I only peruse the deep web on a used and disposable laptop I purchased just for that purpose. In addition, I do not engage with anyone there, and to be honest, I find less and less that draws me back. The surface web has plenty of free smut to consume, and the dangers are far less. If you do find yourself lurking around the deep web, keep in mind that most of the folks there are using it for a reason. Most have something to hide or unseemly work to do. Please, be safe and do not trust anyone. If tonight's story scared you, be sure to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying stories.